I look up at the vast size of the mountains. From where will my help come in time of trouble? The eternal creator of heaven and earth and these mountains will send the help I need.
He holds you firmly in place. He will not let you fall. He who keeps you will never take his eyes off you and never drift off to sleep. What a relief! The one who watches over Israel never leaves for rest or sleep.
The Eternal keeps you safe. So close to him that his shadow is a cooling shade to you. Neither bright light of the sun nor dim light of the moon will harm you.
God the Eternal will keep you safe from all of life's evils. From your first breath to the last breath you breathe. From this day and forever. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Irma, do me a favor and hit the blue light, the button on your microphone. Thank you. Let's get a little feedback up here. All right, Psalm 121. There's so much in it. So much in it. So like all the Psalms, you could really preach a whole series on the different angles to take from this one psalm. That's what makes Scripture so good. It's not that you can read it one time through and then you're done. It's every single time you read it, you're in a different spot in life. So you're going to get something new from the same old thing every single time. This is why this book endures, 2,000 years later. It's amazing. So I'm going to focus similarly to what Elaine did with the kids, but with a twist. Something that's not actually in the psalm itself, but it's something that we get later throughout. It's actually riddled throughout all of Scripture, especially relevant to the New Testament and the communal living of the New Testament. So we're going to take the truth, a truth, from this psalm and connect it with something that we can actually grab onto today. Because I'm a practical preacher. Hearing that God is with me, that's great. But what do I do with that? How do I literally live that truth, right? So we're going to take that truth and we're going to do other things with it. But I want to start with a story, like I do a lot. When I was 10, my dad died. He was 40. Died of heart disease. He had cardiac arrest. So he died very young. And my parents had been separated for 2 years. Before that, he lived where he lived, and my mom lived where she did. And I ended up spending those last 2 years, from the time I was 8 till I was 10, mostly living with my dad. Because my mom just couldn't deal with me. I was a bad kid, let's just put it that way. I was not a good kid. And so my dad ruled with an iron fist, right? So he ruled through fear. And so that's why I stayed with him. But when he died when I was 10, I was thrust back into living with my mom. And we both had but it is what it is. But I went through an extremely dark period from the time I was 10 till about 16. In 5th grade, that would be when I was 10, when my dad died, I got my first D. I went from being a straight A student to getting my first D. In 6th grade, I got a whole slew of Ds. In 7th grade, I got my first F, and I failed 8th grade. You can see the downward spiral just in that one thread. And there were lots of others, but that one, it's measurable. You can see it. In 9th grade, a lot of other stuff happened. So this one little piece isn't the totality of it. But in 9th grade, a new teacher started at my school named Scott Sakarak, Mr. Sakarak. It was his first year teaching ever. And it was my 9th grade year. It was my freshman year of high school. He started teaching, and I was now the low man on the totem pole in 9th grade. And I had him for study hall that year. He didn't teach any of my classes. He taught 7th grade. But I had him for study hall. And Mr. Sakarak could see something in me that nobody else seemed to. I certainly didn't see it myself. But thank God, he was new, and still had an idealized vision of what the teaching profession was supposed to be. He hadn't been beaten down yet by the reality of teaching and how hard that really is. And so he took me under his wing and became a mentor and a friend to me like no one else had. I could go on for hours about all the ways that worked out and how he did that for me. But one of the things that he did was he encouraged me to read. He gave me books all the time of things to read. And if it weren't for him doing that, it's very unlikely I'd be standing here doing this. Because I hated reading. And if you know anything about pastors, we read a ton. I would say probably at least a third, if not half of my time is taken up reading something, studying something. Now, Mr. Sakara did not take away the pain that I was experiencing. He certainly didn't take away my home situation. But he did protect me in all the ways that he could. And he gave me direction when I needed it the most. Especially when I needed it the most. I believe, to this day, looking back, that Mr. Sakara was literally God's presence in my life at the time when I absolutely needed it. Now, there were others. I could equally have told stories about at least 6 other people, mostly adults in my life, that filled that same role. But we're using him today. He was, of all of them, the one that I remember the most. And I'm not even sure he ever knew fully the impact. Because after I graduated, he actually quit the teaching profession a few years later to become some kind of finance thing and make actual money. But I also think that the system beat him down. And I lost contact with him, and I tried for years and years to reconnect with him, and I just never could. I found out last year sometime that he had passed. And I was so sad, because I don't think he ever knew how important he was in my life, how needed he was, how much I believe to this day that he was literally God's presence in my life. And I say all that, now follow it up with this quote. No problem is an anonymous quote, so I have no idea who said it, but it says, no problem is ever as dark when you have a friend to face it with. No problem is ever as dark when you have a friend to face it with. It doesn't mean the darkness goes away, but we can bear a whole lot of things when we're not doing it on our own. Which leads me to the truth that I pull out of this song. And that together the worst of this world because God never leaves us, comma, here's the twist. And you should be able to figure it out from the story already. We can weather the worst that life has to offer because God never leaves us, and we often experience God in the presence of other people. So yes, the truth is that God never leaves us, but sometimes it's really hard to feel that until we realize where to look. And we often experience God's presence in other people. I believe that with my whole heart. That God's presence in this world, when we say things, God is with me, God never leaves me, God protects me, I believe that. But I believe in a practical world too. How does that work? I believe mostly it works out in our relationships with other people. So if that is true, that God never leaves us and we experience that mostly through our relationships with other people, then we should face every conflict and affliction knowing that God is with us, both on the inside, in our hearts, and on the outside, in the people that support us. We can face every affliction, every conflict, when we realize that we are not alone, either spiritually or physically. And I don't really think there's such a difference in the two. We like to disconnect it all, but I think everything is connected. Everything. The burgeoning field of quantum physics is showing us that reality. That literally everything is connected in some way. But here's the problem. Like, that truth seems so obvious. It seems like, yeah, of course, right? And that's what's great about Scripture. the truth seems so obvious, yet we still don't do it, or we don't live it, or we find some way to combat it. Which is why we have to keep coming back to it. What is the problem here? We think we can handle things on our own. Every single one of us in this room thinks we can handle things on our own. I'm about to call Angela out just right now on her sickness. This morning, she's feeling nauseous. Well, she got a prescription for an anti-nausea medicine. Yeah, but I don't want, well, no. You cannot do this alone. You need help. Every one of us in here, there's something, most of us, many things, that we think we can do on our own. We know that God is with us. We know that the challenges we face are easier when we don't have to face it by ourselves. Yet, we continue to be self-centered and think we are strong enough to handle it. We are strong enough to handle it. And our culture, our American culture, really exemplifies that. The idea of if you just work hard enough, all the good things will happen. I can do this. If there's a problem, it's really my fault. And I can handle it. I can fix it. I can deal with it. We shame people when they are weak enough to ask for help. Oh, come on, man up. You ever heard that one? Man up. I see lots of head shaking because you know exactly what I'm saying is true. We hate weakness in our culture. And we perceive anybody who can't do it on their own, can't pull themselves up by their bootstraps, to be weak. But God did not make us to function alone. Isolated creatures. No matter how you look at the Bible, you can look back, even at Genesis, at the beginning, and know that that's true. We were not created to be alone, ever. Never. God hardwired us to need other people. God hardwired us to need other people. So why do we think we can do this on our own? We weren't made to do it on our own. Never. Why do we try to bear the weight of the world alone when we weren't built to do it? Think about it for a second. Every one of us in here knows, especially if you're a good Bible-believing Christian, that we were not made to be alone. And you can see it from Genesis till the end. There is never a time when humanity is able to function alone. Ever. So why do we try to bear the weight of the world when we were not made to do it? Because unlike the psalmist in this psalm, we do not have complete trust that God has our back. If we really did, we wouldn't try to do everything alone. We don't fully trust that God really has our back. Yeah, God's with me, but I can do this alone. That's not trusting God. That's not trusting God's creation. If we fully trusted God in the way that God reveals God's self to us, in the way that God interacts with us through other people, we would trust the fact that other people are needed in our lives to help us get to where we need to go, to help us be the people we need to be, to help us through the hard times. But we don't trust that. When we don't trust God's creation, we do not trust God. Is creation perfect? No, absolutely not. But we've been so conditioned over time to think that creation is bad, that people are bad, that the world is terrible. What did God say in Genesis after He created it all? It was good. It didn't stop being good. It just got cloudy. No matter what your theology of sin is, it never stopped having the core of goodness. It can't stop having the core of goodness. God doesn't create horrible things. God doesn't create things that can't be redeemed. And you can only redeem something that has a kernel of goodness still. Or else that's just new creation. That's not redemption. Redemption is taking something that used to be good, stopped being good, and bringing it good again. But you can't create something out of nothing. God probably can. But I don't think that's how that works here. now. So we do not have complete trust that God has our back. But I like this song because the song, if it's nothing else, it is a great praise to a God that does not leave us. So we may not trust fully God, but that doesn't mean God goes anywhere. Eventually, we'll catch on. Eventually, we'll catch on. And remember, God is with us, giving us the shadow of God's protection and comfort, even when we don't fully realize it. Sometimes I think of it like this. If I'm sitting under a tree, I'll use the imagery from the song even. If I'm sitting under a tree, protected from the shade, I can see the sun out there still. Like I can see where the shade stops and the sun starts. Right? Because of who I am, like my bigness in that situation. But imagine I were like an ant in that same shade. It would seem like that is just how things are. I would know that it's there, but I wouldn't know how big it is. I wouldn't necessarily realize when it ends. God's protection is there whether we realize it or not, because we are so small. God is so big that even when we can't see the edge of the protection, it's still there. A lot of times we just wander around inside of this whole thing and not realize that the shade is there. God is there. We truly are ants underneath a giant oak tree when it comes to comparing us to God, but for some reason we think we're a little bigger than we are. But God is there, whether we realize it or not. I could never have known, in the middle of that situation that I was dealing with as a kid, in the middle of that struggle, that Mr. Sakarik was God's voice in my life. Could never have realized it then. I realize it now, but that's after many, many years of connecting the dots through, directly from him to here. And that's, for me, how I think it works so often. So often we don't realize it when we're in the middle of it. We have to look back and realize it was there. Do that with Angela too. The fact that I'm a pastor here, I can draw back dots. I can connect the dots back to very specific encounters in our relationship where I guarantee it was God speaking through her to me. That is why it's important for us to always be self-reflecting. We can't just accept the reality of things and how we understand things. We always have to be looking back. Say, how did we get here? It will help us moving forward. Knowing where we came from and how we got here will help us. And it will also help us really strengthen those relationships that God has put in our life. All the people that I know for certain I can draw back the line and say, this is God's voice in my life, are people who I will never stop having a relationship with. And all those people can speak into my life in ways nobody else can, because I've accepted that sometimes God speaks through those people to me. God doesn't go anywhere. We just have to learn to see God in a different way. So I'm asking you, look at God in other people, the people in your life, and not just the good people in your life, because there's some pretty wretched people I have in my life that I'm pretty sure God has put there to irritate the hell out of me. But that doesn't mean God didn't put them there, okay? Angela, she's probably one of those voices. I only say that because she just raised her hand. I don't believe that. But heck, maybe it's true. I don't know. So I'm going to end this message with a song, kind of a song. I mean, I'm going to end with a song, but then a little bit of a story after that. It's interesting that Carmen said the Santa, Santa was his answer, because the song that I'm about to play for you is a Christmas song, right? It's generally played at Christmas time. The message is Christmassy. But I want you to look past the holiday specificness of it to the message I just preached to you and how that can be inserted in the song. This is all Angela's idea, by the way. We were talking about this message. She goes, it's just like that song. I'm like, what? She says, yeah, you know that song. And so listen to it, like absolutely hearing it. So I'm going to play it for you.